Hey everyone, it's Sean at Wizardline Technologies, and I thought I'd take a second of your time to bring you up to speed on the changes that we have been making to the Team Member API. If you are not familiar with that, you should check out our preview video. There'll be a link in the description below. And let's just talk briefly about what we've been up to. So if you signed up for the Team Member API kind of beta test, if you will, which 400 stores did, thank you very much, we put out a roadmap. And what we had talked about was the week of June 7th, last week, we would add the ability to add team member files and team member positions to a Pulse system. Prior to that, the initial rollout of the API only allowed you to update an existing team member file. And this week, available right now, we have added the ability to easily update all instances of a team member across your entire company, as well as the ability to copy a team member file from one store to another. So let's just take a brief moment and look at some of those new features and exactly how they work. So the first thing we're going to talk about is adding a new team member position, and it's fairly straightforward. It's on the Hiring Info tab. And whereas before you could easily edit the team member position by clicking on it and then making the changes that you wanted to make, you now have the ability to also add a position to a team member file, and that's done simply through clicking the Add Position button and then assigning the team member a new position and clicking Add Position. The second thing that we added was the ability to add a new employee directly to Pulse, and so that is accomplished through this new employee button located here. And clicking that clears the grid of all information that was in there, and allows you to enter a new team member into first the wizard interface, and then it'll push down to the store. So anything that's in red is currently required. We're going to kind of tweak that over time, as well as give you the ability to perhaps change what is required. Some of these being required may seem weird. We talked about this in a document we put out to the people who are testing this, but there are some default settings that the interface uses if you don't provide anything. And so, just for example, relationship, marital status, gender, and ethnic group, if you don't give it a value, the interface we use defaults to other, single, male, and not applicable as entered. So that's why those are required fields. And, you know, just straightforward stuff, not license, address information, and some basic hire stuff. So let's look at, I took the time to just fill this out already. So we're going to add myself to the store that we selected, and everything is in there. Now, in order to add a team member file to Pulse, you have to assign it a position as well. There's no way through the API to push a team member to Pulse without also giving that team member a position. So let's go ahead, we'll just do a CSR, and I don't know, $10 an hour we'll call it. It's effective immediately. There's no mileage rates. And now we are going to add this employee to the Pulse system. And the add employee is now succeeded. So this team member is active. And now we view the list again, and we see that indeed the team member file has been added to the Pulse system. I'm not showing the Pulse systems in this particular demo, but when you use the system, you'll see that all of this information is instantly written down to a Pulse store. So that is a review of what we added last week. Now let's talk about the exciting stuff that we have added to the system when it comes to adding the ability to copy and update employee information across many stores. So let's take a particular team member and see how this works. So the team member is one of our floating trainers, and so when we select the team member from the grid, there's a new tab called Interstore. We might change the name there, but it has two tabs, an Update tab and an Additions tab. So here we see all of the locations where Darren is already in a Pulse store. So let's just say that we just made a change to this team member file and we wish to propagate that change all the way down to all of his other team member files. So here we see he's got some different statuses. He's got active and inactive in a few stores. So by default, we don't update the status in the destination store. Whatever status is there is the status that will remain. We're simply going to push just the changes to the team member information. And we also don't by default push positions. So unless you made a change to a position or you made a change to a status and you want to propagate it, you can leave both of those unchecked. But copying, updating another store is as simple as clicking the checkbox and then click the Update Stores button. And so we see that it's highlighted in green, which stands for successfully updated. And you can do that for every store that the team member has a team member file in. So I've selected them all. I click the Update Stores button, and in real time, it just copied Darren's information to all of the stores instantly. So that's how easy it is to make updates across your entire company on a particular team member. Then the second tab is the Additions tab. So Darren is set up in these stores, but he is currently not set up in a bunch of our other locations. And so what this tab does is it looks at each individual store and then kind of determines whether or not the team member code and user ID that the team member is using is available in that location. And so for this particular team member, it is. Everything's green. So his team member code is 7559 and user ID is available in every single store. So there's kind of nothing that we have to change there. But let's take a look at another team member and just talk about when there's a conflict, how that's going to get handled within this wizard interface. So here we see everything's green, including password, which means that we're able to send down the team member password as it exists in this location with the team member file as well. But like I said, let's take a look at another employee where there is a particular conflict, and we're going to look at Ben. And so Ben has some existing accounts in a few stores. Here we actually see that his name is different in another store, and we could update that if we wanted, but we're going to focus on the Additions tab. So here we see things are a little bit yellow, and so Ben's team member code and user ID is available in most of the stores, but we see in 3209 both aren't available, the team member code or the user ID, and in 3782 his team member code is taken, but for whatever reason his user ID is available as well. So we need to, if we are to push to these stores that are highlighted in yellow, we need to assign a different team member code and or user ID. In addition, Ben, we also need to specify what password we're going to send down on Ben's behalf. So if it's yellow, we have to fix it. So let's talk about what codes to use in other stores. If you happen to know what code you want to use, you can go ahead and type it in. You can even override the ones that are green if you wanted. But chances are you kind of have no clue, especially the larger your franchise is, the more complicated this becomes. So let's take a look at one other team member, because we're going to actually copy this team member down to 2 stores in the demo. So we're going to take Dylan. So again, Dylan is yellow in some stores. So Dylan has a conflict in store 3782. His team member code and his user ID is taken. However, for Dylan, we are able to send the password along with the update as well. So there's a neat little suggest code button down here. So what this is going to do is it's going to look for all of the conflicted stores, and it's going to find a code that works for all of them. So for this one, there's only a single store that it needs to work in. But this is saying that for Dylan, code 7209 is available in 3782. It would actually be available in all stores, and we'll probably show an example of that in a second. So just by clicking that button, it will find a code that will work and then assign that code to the store in question. So let's go ahead and actually copy Dylan's team member file to a couple stores. So we're going to copy him to 3225 that's going to use the codes that he's currently using in the store that we selected, and we're going to copy them to this conflict store 3782. And so these X's, we don't need to change them. They'll automatically transform to these backup codes that we did. So let's go ahead and click the Add to Stores button. And so what that's doing is it's pushing Dylan's file down to those two stores. And so you see we got a green successfully updated there, and we have a green successfully updated in 3225 as well. So now what we see is that Dylan has two team member files in both stores with the team member codes that he's used to using, as well as just kind of a new team member code just because of the conflict that happened. But the ability to copy Dylan's records down to all of the stores is as simple as just, clicking it or clicking the particular options that you want and clicking the Add to Stores button. So here we see everything's green for Dylan now because the only store that was conflicted is no longer in the list. So let's take a look at one more example so we can just talk about this Suggest Code button a little bit more. And let's take just a team member file that we use for access in our stores. So it is the Access Supervisor. So what we'll find out here is that all of these grids, the updates and the additions, work off of the Social Security number. That's how it knows who's the matching team members in other stores. So this is just a fake social that we put in for a particular Access Supervisor user ID that we use. And so we actually see we have an old team member who actually used that fake social, and then we have the Access Supervisor set up in a second store. So here the grid is super ugly, but I wanted to show you how this Suggest Code button works. So the team member code of 1234 is not available in a lot of stores, and the user ID 9999 is available in even fewer stores. So again, using the Suggest Code button, we click it, and it will find a code that will work in all of the conflicted stores. So if we wanted to push this team member down to all of these stores, we could. All of these X's and so on would convert to 9986, and it would work in every single one of these conflicted stores. So you don't have to worry about the vast volume of conflicts that you have. Just using the Suggest Code button will solve it with the click of a button. And so that's how the Suggest Code button works. We'll talk more about Max Protect and kind of codes and user IDs and conflicts and the best way to avoid conflicts in a future video when I can really get into the detail of that. But for now, that's where we're at on the roadmap. Coming up next week, we're going to be working on an interface that allows you to just kind of mass change stuff. So just I went over this in the preview video. So just like picture like a grid of all the expirations, and you can change them all on one sheet, as well as some of the other stuff that we're looking for to add to this team member API. So hopefully this preview you found beneficial, and hopefully you find this updates and additions in the Interstore very useful and beneficial. Thanks for taking the time.